Welcome to Local Football Flavor, the show where we talk to local fans about what's really going on with their team. Because we've all had this experience of watching a telecast or a national show discussing our team and hearing something that we just flat out know is wrong. Now, since we're only really fans of our own team, we can't know what's going on with the other 31. And that's where Local Football Flavor comes in to give us advice from fans about what's really going on so we can make better selections for our waiver wires, so we know who to avoid and who to target, so we get a little extra tidbits to help us about who do we want to make bets on. But at the end of the day, local fans letting us know what they're thinking is going on with their team. So today is going to be a recap show where we're going to discuss the last 4 teams that we covered and get ready to let you guys know what our individual biases is, because knowing the biases of the guys who are doing the questioning between myself and Bob really does let you have more open insight to what the fans are going through and where our questions are guiding them. So this is going to be the before and afters of the interviews and what we thought happens. And the teams we'll be breaking down today: the Pittsburgh Steelers, the San Francisco 49ers, the Carolina Panthers, and those New York Football Giants. And yeah, admittedly, I thought the Giants were really bad before that conversation, and I didn't get much more optimistic. But nonetheless, here's Local Football Flavor. Welcome to Local Football Flavor, where we talk to local fans to get the real information of what's going on with their team. Hey, and welcome back. So, yeah, let's talk about some of the recap of what we discussed before, what some of our biases were, what some of our thought processes that we had going into the conversations and coming out. Bob, if it's all right with you, I'd like to start with the Steelers and save the Steelers for last, just because I feel we can talk forever, given
Probably
our surroundings. So what was thoughts going into the conversation with the Niners, and what was your takeaway coming out of them?
I mean, with the Niners, I always have this kind of opinion that they're not that bad, and they're not as bad as people want to make them out to be. Because, I mean, like, honestly, if you look at the Niners over the past couple of years, the only real season that they were really, really bad was that Nick Mullins season where Garoppolo got hurt. They've always been kind of in the conversation of, okay, this is the team that's going to win the NFC West. There was those years where the Seahawks were the Legion of Boom, where they were good, and the 49ers kind of fell off a little bit. But I mean, we never really talk about the Cardinals being extremely good, even though they went to the Super Bowl that one year. We never, and that was because of Kurt Warner. But like,
the reason Kurt Warner's a Hall of Famer.
Every other year, it's like, okay, whatever. And the same with the Rams. The only reason we talk about the Rams is because of Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, and everybody else too. And I mean, like,
all the St. Louis version, at least, yeah.
Yeah, all things considering, I mean, the 49ers have been the team that has, been competitive in that division for a little while. I mean,
I like his breakdown of how they're analytically based and how they brought sophistication to the NFL. That conversation that we had with Doug.
And anytime a team brings something else to the table that another team or another conference doesn't have, it's worth talking about, especially when you think about the West Coast offense. I mean, a lot of teams use it now, and some use it more successfully than others. But like Doug said, too, is that the quarterback is he alluded to it, maybe not necessarily said it to the same degree, but is an important component of the West Coast offense. And you have to have a quarterback that can read the defense, that can go through, know where those wide receivers are going to be. And the wide receivers don't necessarily have to be the most skilled, but it definitely helps the West Coast offense when you have a possession wide receiver, or you have a physical wide receiver like Deebo Samuel,
Deebo's
T.O. was too.
Yeah.
You gotta be physical in the offense, because you're not shooting it down the field 80 yards, 70 yards, because you're behind. You're trying to get those yardage. You're trying to get those yards. And I think despite the hate that Garoppolo gets, he's he's valid. I mean, he's mid, but he's valid. I mean, he's not anything to write home about, but being coached at one point by Belichick in New England and then traveling all the way, his journey. I mean, like, it's just interesting to me that everybody wants to throw him away.
That part is interesting to me too, because he is very fundamentally sound. In that regards, I think the best comp to him in terms of the way they play is Baker. He's going to put the ball where it's supposed to be. Very rarely is he going to make a dumb decision. Just it's not going to be coming out of a howitzer, and he's not going to super push the ball downfield. He's going to make the intelligent choice to get you to fight the next day. Which, given what Doug talked to us about with the Niners, about how they are so robotic and methodical about controlling this thought process, to me, it seems that they're losing a very good, stable decision maker who was very good at read progressions. I think Doug said the word read progression 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
That he's the one they want to get rid of for an unknown who, again, has only really played 2 full seasons of football since he was 18. There's raw talent.
Yeah,
I ain't fighting that.
When
but
you look at it, though, the times that the 49ers have had success in the West Coast offense has been with a guy that has been electric, has been at least in the last, 20, 25,
yeah, but
30
Montana
years.
and Young were electric for 2 different reasons.
Right, but I'm saying
Young was more mobile, but Montana was foot in the ground, ball out, and that's what Jimmy G was. So in a sense, it seems like they're doing a very watered down transition from Montana to Young.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't believe in Trey Lance. I think Doug said it really well, where you have to really, really, really see over the next couple of years how he's going to turn out, because he said, Colin Kaepernick had 1 good year. You find out that he can't do read progressions. He's not as good as everybody wants him to be. Then, is that true about Trey Lance? And, it's got to be said for a guy that has escapability in the vein of, Lamar Jackson, where if I can be mobile, why do I need to throw the ball? And I think that's why, a guy like Lamar Jackson might be pegged down on some people's lists of really good quarterbacks, is because he's been on a team that hasn't had a really, really good wide receiver in a long time, but also
people don't want to play with him.
Also the progressions, he has to get out of there. And I mean, the reason I put the 49ers and the Ravens in the same conversation is that, the quarterback situations are very often similar, where, they either go from a very foot in the ground quarterback, like you're saying, to having somebody that can run the ball and doesn't make those decisions. And so you don't give your wide receivers opportunity to shine. Like, I can't even remember. I mean, like, Torrey Smith, and I mean, Ravens have Rashad Bateman right now, but and they had Hollywood Brown, but I don't remember like a physical wide receiver. And their run game is always really based on, after Jamal Lewis, you're dealing with a lot of running backs at the same time because of conditioning. They get hurt, you're putting through the, and so they feel very similar to me in that respect, where if the 49ers want to win, they have to play defense, but they have to set themselves up in position. And this can be said about any team, but they have to make decisions with their running backs that are, it's not going to be good for a fantasy perspective, but you got to get guys that can play the positions at the times that you need them. So if you need to sub in a guy that's a really good pass catcher because your other guy is not, I think that the 49ers have an array of running backs, including Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson Jr., and they have a rookie too. They just need to see what these guys can do. And if you put a running quarterback in there, I don't know if that's necessarily going to turn out well for them in the long term, but it could.
Yeah, I see the risk there, because you look at it and say there's almost too many options to run the ball. And currently what's going on since we've recorded that episode with Doug is they've had a lot of interior line injuries. So when you have a quarterback who's already prone to run, if they get gun shy from getting hit, they tend to run a whole lot more and really decrease their development. To a certain extent, that did happen to Kaepernick. And we talk about how he never developed to learn read progressions. So the thing that is remarkable for me with the Niners, as I look at this team, for if we're watching during a game to kind of predict what's going to happen, they are very cutting edge in the way that they do their blocking schemes. That's something that we discussed. And something that's cutting edge the first couple of seasons can really, it's like a new saw blade. It will cut you faster and well. But as it dulls and people figure it out, that's where it can really backfire against you. So thankfully, in San Francisco, they had the guy who makes the new saws in terms of the new innovations of that running game, and places that are just trying to copy it don't do it very well. And where I'm getting with this is the Niners are a very run-first team, and putting themselves with Trey Lance makes them more of a run-first team, especially initially. So if this is a team that, when you look at how their defense is constructed, it led the team in unblocked sacks. And it is unlikely that they will have twice as many as the second place team as they did last year. And again, that's from Football Outsiders. They also were the absolute best pass defense when the ball traveled less than 15 yards in the air, but the absolute worst pass defense when it traveled more than 15 yards in the air.
Yeah, and that's a big issue because you got Stafford in the division, who we know, historically speaking, can just take the ball and do whatever he wants. And now the Rams have Allen Robinson. They also have Cooper Kupp coming back. They don't really have anybody at tight end, but when we're speaking about the two guys, Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp, I mean, to say that those are Stafford's best receivers when he's had Kelvin Johnson in the past, I hate to say it, but it's true that he has now two guys. Because when you look at Allen Robinson in Chicago, it was he could get the ball and do crazy things with it, but Stafford will get them the ball if he's healthy. You also have Kyler Murray, who, if he's not running, he's going to just chuck the ball too. And Hollywood Brown can run really, really fast. DeAndre Hopkins, when he comes back, is really, really good. So if their defense isn't up to snuff past a certain yardage, it's going to be difficult to keep themselves in the game if they're run first and Trey Lance is not able to make his read progressions.
Yeah, if you don't get a lead early, it's the problem.
And that's what makes me worry. Can you
bring it back?
And and Rich from the Giants, talked about playing from behind a lot. And so I think that the question in terms of Trey Lance's development, and I mean, by no means am I an expert in quarterback development, but playing from behind when you're trying to make read progressions, when you're expected to be the next big thing, is really damaging for a quarterback. And I think it could be seen in a lot of these younger quarterbacks that are coming up in the league, is that you get put on the Jets and you're expected to be the guy. You're not given time to go through your reads. You're playing from behind constantly. So you're not able to see the game script from the other side.
The challenge is the game script. That's exactly it. If the defense knows what you're going to do, it is very hard to be able to counter them. And that's where the Niners have built themselves in a great way to finish up this segment on the Niners, is that if they do get a lead early on you, because of the ability to run the ball, it can snuff the clock out really easily. However, it requires their pass rush to get home. Because if you're an offense that can stop their pass rush and be able to match the wits of their defense, which I honestly do not believe Arizona can. I don't think they're smart enough to do it. So that's why I don't think Arizona has a chance in this division. I think Arizona is the best fighting for third. Kingsbury is just, that's what I think of Kingsbury today. So when you're looking at that, they're going to be able to sack Kyler Murray because Kyler Murray is kind of the example of once everyone knows what we're doing, we can make him scramble and run away and make mistakes. And that's the perplexing part to me with getting rid and shoving Garoppolo out the door. Aside from the giant elephant in the room, which no one really knows this except for Garoppolo and the Niners, is he actually healthy? I mean, he did have shoulder surgery and didn't start throwing until training.
I mean, you can talk about health, you can talk about contract, because a lot of times a player's value is really considered against his contract too. Even if even if he's good, if there's another guy in the room that could be better and the contract is better, the team's not going to want him. And so, I mean, I think as a fan base, I think for, I haven't completely given up on him, but then again, I'm not a San Francisco fan, but he has two weapons in Debo and Ayuk that, although Ayuk played poorly last year,
he does that a lot.
And this is something that Rich said about Kadarius Toney, if he can get his head together and put himself and they can put themselves in a position to win, I think they could win a lot of games this year. But the Rams, I think, are just too good that they're going to, even if the 49ers play really, really, really well, they're going to end up second place in the division. And they're probably not even going to make the playoffs the way that the league is going right now.
Yeah, that's where I was ultimately getting to this. I don't think they have a chance of beating the Rams. And given the fact that when we take a broader span of the NFC, then let's take a look at all the teams we kind of project to finish second in their divisions. Well, Minnesota to me is the obvious number 2 in the North.
I would say they might even be number 1.
No, Green Bay is number 1. There's no way around that. It's Green Bay. Green Bay's winning that division. I'll bet anything I own on that. And then in the East, I believe in Philly. I think Dallas is going to have a step back. But either way, you're looking at whoever's second in that division is probably stealing a wild card. And second in the South, it's definitely stealing a wild card, whether that be the Saints or Tampa, because those two have a nice little rivalry going back and forth. So then we look into like what we were talking about before. Does Carolina, as the third team in the South, have a chance to jump in and take the Niners slot? Does Detroit have a chance to do it? And they're already ahead of Arizona. So to me, it kind of looks like you're kind of getting the Niners in the playoffs. And with this wild card that they're trying to build up with Lance running, it might be able to do some damage again. Although on the other hand, it could completely implode and we might be stuck with, I don't know, Detroit making their first appearance in forever. Or
the fact that
the Redskins get their stuff together.
The fact that you put Detroit in the same sentence as playoffs.
That's my point.
Makes me really, really want a Detroit fan on this show to talk to us about if that's even possible. Because you look at that team, offensively, they have weapons for the first time in a long time, since Stafford and Calvin Johnson, but they actually have a running back this time that you can say the offense might be ready, but the defense is still giving up leads in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left to go, and you can't do that. You can't, and that's the thing with a lot of these teams that we've talked about this week, is that not many of them are built to hold a lead.
The Niners actually are, because they can run it out. The Niners are, but the problem is if you're stopping their pass rush, you can throw your way back into the game. And to me, that's where the Niners have a potential flaw in their game script scenario. That if you shut down their run, I don't think I think you'll know that by halftime. Are they running the ball effectively? If they're not, you're not winning that game. I think you'll know by halftime of every game they play.
What gives the 49ers the advantage in the run game, though, is you have to plan for 4 running backs. So, last year they had Raheem Mostert. They had a couple other guys. If Trey Sermon doesn't make the team or puts on the practice squad or is ineligible or whatever in a week, then you're down to like 2 or 3. But each one of those running backs provides you something different. And I think that's a benefit that not a lot of people look at, is that, yes, they do go through a lot of running backs. Health is a big concern. But if all of them are healthy, it definitely gives them a leg up, because now you have to game plan what do these running backs offer the 49ers? And hopefully the 49ers are smart enough, like you were saying, their coach is really intelligent. How do they use the running backs to give them a leg up on the competition? Because when you have that many and you're not game planning just for one guy, like maybe, if you're in Indy, you're game planning for Taylor almost exclusively and maybe Nyheim Hines a little bit. In Tennessee, you are planning exclusively for Derrick Henry. And so when another person comes in the game and you didn't game plan for them,
it's certainly a changeup that they have, that most teams use that extra resource of my extra offensive weapon on a receiver or a tight end. The Niners already have an elite tight end, an elite receiver. They just don't have a second receiver of any note because Ayuk is not good, period. I don't care what anyone tries to sell me on him. We let Doug do that for 10 minutes, try to sell me on Ayuk.
No, you tried to sell him on Ayuk.
No, I was trying to sell myself, I guess. But anyway, Ayuk ain't any good. So let's switch from obviously an elite coach of the NFC to the one who shouldn't have a job right now, according to Dave, the guy who talked to the Carolina with us. So again, I think Carolina's right in that bubble of fighting for 6-7 seed, or in the NFC, I bet Carolina finishes between 6 and about 10. And that's kind of their window. Two of them get in the playoffs, 3 of them don't.
I think that for both the Giants and the Carolina Panthers, they're in a very similar situation with talent that needs to stay healthy. And their season can go either way. I mean, they play each other. What is it, the first or second week of the season?
They play each other in week 2, and last year, to quote Dave, they were destroyed by the Giants. Carolina was absolutely destroyed by the Giants. It was disgraceful, is the way he said it.
So when you look at both teams, and when you hear their fandoms talk with Dave and Rich, there is both optimism, but it's very armored optimism.
Oh yeah.
And so you want to feel really good about your team. And I think you're talking up Carolina a lot. And I think my feeling from Dave is that there's a sense of excitement with Baker Mayfield, but the team is still not that great. And the defense is young, but getting better.
Well, that's my optimism.
Christian McCaffrey.
Well, you're asking why I'm crazy for Carolina. Optimism is the defense.
Yeah, and I can't remember their schedule right now. So if you could pull it up, I would like to see it again. But
yeah,
the issue that I have with Carolina is Christian McCaffrey, because yes, they got another number 2 running back. They still have Chuba Hubbard, but the coach is still the same. The teams in the division.
Isn't that really the fly in the ointment?
I mean, the teams in the division are still almost exactly the same. They're built the same way. So there's nothing really in me to say that they're even going to sniff the playoffs either this year or next year because of that. I mean, you might be able to steal one from Tampa if Tampa's feeling down. You might be able to steal one from New Orleans if Jameis Winston isn't healthy and they have to play Ian Book or Taysom Hill again. Because let's face it, and our Saints superfan can give us a little bit more information on this, but the Saints are not good if they don't have a quarterback that can throw the ball more than 5 feet.
Well, yeah.
No matter if they have
not to go down the Taysom Hill road. We'll save that for the episode.
But if you look at this schedule right here, I'm seeing win, loss, 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 win, loss, win, loss, loss. So you're going into your week 13 bye with 4 wins.
Yeah, you don't overcome that. To me, the real spot is if they're going to steal one, I do think they beat Arizona. I guess that's a little bit different. But
if they're going to steal one, they have to steal 2. They have to get Arizona.
They have to steal 2 of the 3 between Arizona, Niners, and Baltimore. And at the end of the day, by the time, I mean, the two Atlanta games have to be a given.
You have to win those two.
And
because go ahead to the end of the schedule.
Seattle's a win.
You're going to beat Seattle. Steelers.
Steelers are a hard game at that point in the year.
Detroit. I mean, if you think Detroit and Carolina both have a chance to make the playoffs, you're going to know before week 16 if that's happening or not. You're going to know before week 12 if that's happening or not.
Yeah.
Ending on Tampa and New Orleans could be a blessing, just because.
I wish it was flipped. I wish it was Tampa last instead of New Orleans.
Tampa might have it locked up.
Yeah, you don't want to be the game they lock it up. You want to be the game after it.
New Orleans could be playing for the division.
Yeah.
But you're looking at this schedule, and I'm based off of last year's stats, and based off of win total projections potentially for this year. I'm definitely only seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins.
Yeah, no, the Carolina's on the optimistic side. But that being said, there are 16 teams in that division. We can easily rattle off 5 that they're better than. So they by default have that chance. But I know I said this when we did the Carolina episode, and I stand by it. If they can't beat Cleveland without a real quarterback, you might as well just phone it in, because
I think
actually, quite frankly, they don't start 2-0 because they also don't beat the Giants. I think that it's actually weird. We're going to be talking Giants here next. That's an incredibly pivotal game in year 2 for how is your season going to go. Because if you do somehow start 2-0, which for a team that we're saying is kind of bad, but starting out 2-0. You could be 3-1 going into that Niners game in week 5.
But let's face it,
you could beat
you're facing some dog water competition, and this is the same thing that happened last year to Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Is they played two teams. They played 2 teams that were not competitive and haven't been competitive, and then you're hyping up Sam Darnold, and then you see what he's made of. Now, I believe that Baker Mayfield is an enormously better quarterback than Sam Darnold. And I think most people will agree to that he got a bad shakedown in Cleveland. He also has an attitude and all that stuff. But, what person doesn't? And
it's an attitude that's endearing early, but rips you apart late.
He got a really bad look, and some of that was due to him. Some of that was due to the team. I mean, sending Odell Beckham away didn't necessarily make him better, but we also saw that Odell Beckham is still very talented, but also not really the answer.
No, in Cleveland, I mean, we'll need to talk to someone specifically from Cleveland to break this down. But in Cleveland, it seems that what the situation was that Baker gets first overall. He's actually the first legitimate quarterback they've had in forever. Mm-hmm. He felt it was his. It is my team. I am the savior. I am the quarter. It should have been. And then Odell Beckham basically was a jackass and tried to say, you're not giving me the ball enough. You're not any good. And he said the exact same thing about a Hall of Fame quarterback over in New York. And as Rich said, talking about the Giants, the dude made 1 catch in his career, and people have been loving it ever since because it was on Sunday Night Football in Jerry World.
Well, and the thing is about Cleveland is that, if I'm remembering correctly, for a couple years, they weren't that bad with Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield. I mean, they weren't that good.
So I mean, the history of that is they go 1-15, they go 0-16, then they pick up Baker.
Mm-hmm.
They pick up Baker. They had Chubb already, and then they just started running the ball. And the Baker's first year was the tie to start the season with Pittsburgh there, because Budweiser was going to release all of those cans throughout the city, and none of them got released on a tie, and then they won the next week. And they were decent.
I mean, they
did make the playoffs. They won a playoff game, actually.
They went 8-9 last year.
Yeah.
The year before that, they went 11-5.
That was the playoff win for them.
And the year before that, they went 6-10. So
Yeah, that would have been Baker's first.
I can't comprehend that, like you said, with an actual team that's supportive of him, that he won't do really well. It's just unfortunate that the schedule that they have means that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they almost have to be 3-1 at the end of week 4. And if they're not, you can steal a game here and there. But if you're not 3-1 with that base rolling into the middle of your schedule, things become very bleak if you just lost to Arizona than having a very different San Francisco team come in here. Because the likelihood of dropping those 2 games and then going to the defending champions and winning that game is basically 0. So essentially you're losing to the Rams and you're losing at home against Tampa. That's almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
So and you need to have wins already buffered in, and if they don't start 3-1, I don't see a way that optimism happens. And then you start getting these narratives of fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach. Carolina, while I think has the talent to be a middle of the pack NFC team, in reality could hit the internal implosion button as they get rid of the coach. And they could have a top 5 pick.
You can say something. You can. The thing that cannot happen is you cannot go away from Baker Mayfield. And I don't care how bad he's doing. If they decide to go back to Sam Darnold for whatever reason known to man, say in week 6, season's done. In order to win games in Carolina, no matter if you have Christian McCaffrey or not, you need to have Baker Mayfield playing, because that receiving core of DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and I believe there's somebody else there. That it's good enough. As long
it's middle
as
of the road. It's basically everything else I feel about Carolina. It's middle of the road when we look at them, and they do have a tough deck handed to them, despite the fact that you take their division games, the 2 games against Atlanta, they don't really have the give me until you get to the end of the year against Seattle. So with that being said,
but we don't even know if the Seattle game is going to be a gimme, because Seattle might end up trading for somebody. One of the quarterbacks on the roster may end up turning into something.
As we sit here on August 20th, trading for a quarterback is too late in the game. You really, even if you're getting Jimmy, you won't have enough to be able to implement a playbook. And as you're saying, Darnold should never be the option that they want to bring in to make things better. But the question for me is, do you go to Corral with an placeholder coach?
No.
Because that could destroy Corral.
If you're going to go Corral, you go next year. And I think, and I don't know if Dave would agree with that, but I think that Baker Mayfield has proven himself enough with having 2 winning seasons.
At Cleveland, which that needs to be noted. The Cleveland is historically horrible.
With or without a wide receiver that was pretty. I mean, you're looking at Donovan Peoples-Jones. Make
a very real argument he's going to receive. This will be the best receiving career.
If the defense,
that this offense as a whole is better.
If the defense can play like Dave said they could play, then you will potentially see some upsets on the schedule that Carolina will have against teams that we don't think that they should beat. Because inarguably, Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback that they've had since Cam Newton.
Oh, that's not even close. Yeah. So there's a lot of teams that I would put in the same tier as Carolina that are the push games. I just have them lower in the tier. Like, I have Arizona below the Cardinals in the tier, but I have San Francisco in the same tier. I have Baltimore and Denver in the same tier as Carolina. I have them above Cleveland and the Giants. And then we look at the second half. Detroit, I think, has elevated themselves to that tier, although probably still below Carolina. Seattle is definitely below that tier. And, objectively speaking, taking off my hometown Steelers lenses, they're also probably in that same tier. So when you look at it in the tier world of are you definitely a top third team? Or are you definitely a bottom third team? Carolina has almost all their schedule in that middle third, which is exactly what the NFL wants. Everything's going to be close and toss-up-y. But going back to the initial fly in the ointment, Matt Rule loses those games. Matt Rule blows them. And at the end of the day, Matt Rule might be the entire reason we blew this season. And when you look in the macro picture in the future, both Darnold and Baker Mayfield are only signed for 1 year. So if you enter into the season giving Baker the keys, it's very clear Baker is not the reason of your failing. How do you not re-sign Baker? Because it's clear Donald's not.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
you put yourself in cap hell,
and that's why you can't. That's why you can't put Matt Corral in, no matter how much you want to. If Baker Mayfield is making plays, getting them down the field, putting them in position to win, and not winning the game because of a coach's play call, it's the coach's problem, not the talent's problem. And that's been a going back to Detroit, that's been a Detroit thing for a long time.
Yes, it
where
has.
The coaching, except for a couple years ago when they actually had a good coach that, you could see that they were winning games. A good coach wins the games that the talent is showing them that they can win. I mean, and they also win games that when the talent puts them in position to win, they don't make bonehead decisions
they don't lose the game. And a great coach wins with inferior talent, and a bad coach loses with inferior or loses games
and then ends up in assistant high school coach.
That's right. So on that note, we're going to do a quick little ad break, and then on the other side, we'll talk about the Giants and the Steelers. This episode is sponsored by the podcast Father and Joe. Father and Joe aims to bring individuals into a better relationship with God. Each episode discusses an element of the human experience that we all can relate to, as well as questions about faith. What are indulgences? What's going on with purgatory? Why can I mentally grasp the concept of God, but I don't feel him in my heart? During each episode of Father and Joe, we are invited to enhance our relationships, and in doing so, we will improve ourselves and society. Download Father and Joe every Tuesday. So we thank you for watching this episode of Local Football Flavor. We know there's a lot of different things you can be doing with your time, so we appreciate you either listening or watching us in whatever way you're digesting us here today. So we here at the episode want to try to request helping us out in one of three different ways, because all three ways will help us. First is the analytics. If you can either click like or subscribe on whatever platform you're watching us on, it makes a tremendous difference, as those algorithms kind of control what our popularity will be, and you, our listeners, are the only one that can help us win those analytics games. So by clicking like and subscribe, it makes a tremendous deal for us, and leaving reviews and comments help tremendously as well. So that's what we ask as you as a listener to do. If you're interested in the show, you'd like to be a guest on the program, please reach out to us. We love talking to people, and it's our conversation about your favorite team, letting people know what's really going on that the national media normally misses. So we would love to have those conversations with you. And the third way is the sponsors. As you've noticed, we've already had some sponsors reach out to us here. You can see one down here in the corner. You can easily be in the scroller along the bottom, having your own personal message, as well as all other fun things like controlling the jersey I'm going to wear, or that little teddy bear behind me can be one of your team logos things. You can make me wear a stupid cheese head if that's what you want to do. All of those things are available by reaching out to us at localfootballflavor@gmail.com. We thank you guys very much for being a part of the show. And now let's resume to today's episode. So, Bob, coming out of that, talking about the cheesehead during the ad, Packers are winning that division just because Rodgers is still there. Until you give me a better quarterback than Rodgers, it's such a platform.
I disagree with this, and I will say that division will be very competitive, and Minnesota will eke out the division lead. There's a lot. I mean, Rodgers is still the better quarterback in that division, but I think Minnesota has the better team.
They might have the better team, but Matt LaFleur is a great coach. Minnesota just changed theirs. And at the end of the day, Zimmer beat the Packers, and he's the only one who really ever did. Certainly wasn't Chicago, as he's screaming how much he owns them. But we'll have a Packers guest on to discuss that a little bit later on. But I can't count Rodgers out until he's gone. So
I'm not counting them out. I'm saying they're still going to make. I still think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think Minnesota wins the division.
I don't see that coming. Nonetheless, let's come to a team that we're pretty confident is not going to win any divisions in the New York Giants.
I feel so bad for Rich.
I do. I feel bad for all of Giants Nation. I know that you guys are one of the biggest fan bases and you guys have a lot going for you, but I just don't see a lot of upside in this team that we can really build around. You know, it is the culmination, as Rich said, that a GM who was horrible, and this is his blueprints fading apart and breaking. I have watching the preseason game, I have less faith in Dan than I've ever had. Barkley is 100% healthy. I don't see him being able to carry a team. I don't think any running back not named Henry can carry an NFL team. And you know, I do not believe in immaturity in Kadarius Toney. I think that immaturity in the NFL is the fastest way to get out of the NFL. And I don't see an upside of any single person on that roster, with the exception maybe Ekwonu, mostly because I like saying his name, that it's a reason to get behind.
I thought he was on Carolina.
Yeah, you're right. It's Neal. Ekwonu is a Carolina. That's another reason I love Carolina. You're right. Neal is the one who went there. They were the first two tackles that went. So, yeah, the Giants are making steps to improve themselves in the trenches, which Philadelphia has shown that's how you win in this division.
Here's the thing about the Giants. They need a major glow up, right? And so when you think about what the Giants have done historically over the last several years, that division –
they've had the least amount of wins in the last 5 years.
That division has constantly cannibalized itself for really no apparent other reason other than they're all really average teams.
Except for the Giants.
Each game is a toss-up. I mean, the Giants, if you could pull up the games from last year and the games from the year before, when I see the Giants play, I'm just looking at them and hoping for something, like anything, to be honest with you, because there's nothing to be excited about, right?
Here's Giants 2021, so last season.
30-29 to Washington. You could have won that game. 20-17 at Kansas City. You could have won that game, right?
Inferior coaching in both regards.
You beat Philly. You got stomped by Tampa. Go ahead, keep going down. Look at those 3 big L's right there, right? Then
I feel like 9 L's,
but look, that's not Daniel Jones's fault.
No, when Daniel Jones taps out in week 12, essentially,
and if you look at 12
with Jones, he's basically 500. Win, loss.
4-7 going into that week 12 with Jones, but they did lose that other game with Mike Glennon there. So 4-6. And look how many games Barkley actually played with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, whenever Barkley's there, it's not an explosion game, and that's the number one thing that I remember.
To 2020.
So going to 2020,
I'm trying to find something to be excited about for this team. Okay. You look, Barkley played one game last year or one game that year? Go all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah, no, that was when he got hurt.
Right? 6-10. Go to 2019.
Bob, you're going to keep seeing losses because they have the least amount of wins over the last 5 years.
I'm just trying to find a game where Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley played at the same time.
That would be like week 1. Here's one.
Right. Okay, so here you go. Week 12, week 13, but this is when they still had Manning and they were just testing out Daniel Jones most likely, right?
Here's the highest combination of the two of them together. An overtime game
in overtime. Right?
But
so what I'm saying more so is that, what Rich was talking to us about, is conditioning, health, making sure that you put yourself in a position to win, making sure that you don't make bonehead decisions, making sure that you're staying on the field, and hopefully your coach is able to coach you up. Mm-hmm. If we get Saquon Barkley able to produce 80 plus yards a game on the ground and maybe 50 plus receiving yards through the air, Daniel Jones averages maybe like 200, 222 a game, 2 touchdowns, hopefully. If you pull up their schedule from this year, even if that happens, their schedule tells me that it's possible that they can win a decent amount of games. And I'm just trying to be positive here from our friend Rich's perspective.
So here's my upside on the Giants. So to me is they're a year ahead in the progression over Carolina. They got rid of their horrible coach, and Joe Judge was, as I said, dude just didn't win. And they have both of them have aging running backs. Both of them have questions at quarterback, although the Giants to me,
everybody's aging. But
no. I mean, like, for running backs, you get one contract and you're still good. Basically, we discussed that with Doug about the Niners. It's very hard for a running back to get good. So there's the method of building a nest for a quarterback typically is getting the tight end and running back the year before you get your quarterback. Well, when the Giants get their new quarterback in the draft here, they're also going to need to get the running back as well. So it's a little bit delayed in that regards, but when I look at the skill position that I know will be on the Giants roster in 2023, the real hope is Kadarius Toney. And again, I don't believe in banking and immaturity in the NFL. I think it's the best way to destroy your team.
Right.
Coming from the team that brought Beckham into destroying their legacy.
As we brought up, though, an important thing in order to mature in the NFL, you have to see what maturity looks like. And as you brought up when Rich was speaking, and as we talked about on that episode, the age of the roster is really important. And you said that it has an old roster.
It is. That's a Football Insider says that.
But the skill position players are not that old.
No, that's not true, because Shepard is. Their receiving room is old. They just haven't gotten cut yet.
Right.
As we sit right here on August 20th.
I'm not saying Sterling Shepard or, whatever there is still on the roster. Like Rich said, there's a lot of garbage on that roster. But you look at Kadarius Toney, you look at Wan'Dale Robinson. They've been in the league not very long. Wan'Dale Robinson's a rookie. Kadarius Toney was a rookie last year. You look at Daniel Jones, he's been in the league 3-4 years?
No, he's on his 5th-year option, which was an option.
Okay. So then you look at Saquon Barkley. How long has he been in the league?
This year before Jones.
But how many years has he actually played?
6.
Probably like
this is
1.
6.
But
how many years has he actually played?
He
probably only has about 30 games under his belt.
So you're looking at a roster where all the other positions are old, but the skill positions that are going to matter for the Giants this year are not. And so my hope, because I want to have hope with a lot of these teams, my hope is that they can pull out a couple games here and there, but as an organization, I don't think most of the fans want to. I think they're done with Daniel Jones. I think they're done with the whole roster, and they just want new players. And
I would, from the outside looking in, that's how I would be if I was a Giants. But the thing that I would want is I would want to see a very Detroit-like story. We might not get a lot of wins, but the team is certainly galvanizing around the new coach, and he has a direction. because you don't want to be, we don't know what our direction is. And then the new guy comes in and blows it up and destroys his whole thing again until we realize he has no direction.
Yeah, when
That's
you
the
keep
story of
having
Chicago.
when you keep having to rebuild because your team's coach is not doing well, or you don't have the right subset of players in order to be successful, the continuous rebuild is not going to be good for players that are immature. They're not going to be good for players that haven't played because they're injured. It's not going to be good to keep relearning systems for quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is average, too bad. We all know this. But if you give him guys that stay healthy, that he doesn't have to learn different guys' ways of doing X, Y, Z, and you give him consistent players, I'm hopeful that he can be successful. It's Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is an incredibly better quarterback than Daniel Jones. You know this, but if you give him players that he can work with, that he knows that he can work around, and he knows that he can rely on the backfield, and you're not constantly turning over subpar running backs through your system, you have to give the guy a chance to be successful. And the Giants haven't given Daniel Jones a chance to be successful. He's constantly on bad teams, constantly on teams that get hurt. And when I look and I see Mike Glennon is your backup quarterback, you haven't prepared, because you are coming out of Eli Manning, and Eli Manning was the best thing to happen to the Giants in a long time. And with Eli Manning, you're looking at, I mean, David Tyree became a household name because of that catch in the Super Bowl against his head. And all Giants fans know David Tyree. All Giants fans can get around a team like that. But then when you looked at the Giants this year, especially offensively, and last year offensively, there is zero people to get behind. There is nothing exciting about this team. And I think that that's the primary problem with the New York Giants. There's nothing exciting.
It absolutely is. And with that being said, hopefully they're able to get something, like I said, in a Detroit-like manner, where they get around the first-year coach who accepts that this is a bad situation, but he can instill a foundation, get a couple of guys stepping up that we don't really know about right now, but maybe they step up and we can move forward. And there's reason to think that, all right, we might be able to chunk out a couple of extra wins here and be able to pull something out.
Like I said, I don't think the fan base wants that.
No, the fan base wants the first pick overall, but that's how Detroit kind of was built last year. Detroit also had a very early pick this year. Despite improving, they only had 3 wins. So with that being said, let's go to the wild card of wild cards, which is the Steelers. So the reason I wanted to put the Steelers after the Giants is that in fantasy world in particularly, there's this notion that say, I want to take a shot on an unproven offense that did not do well last year. Coming into training camp, there was talk that those Giants might be one of them until we saw Daniel Jones in his first preseason game. It's like not getting a part of that team. So with the Steelers, their offense is night and day.
I'm buying the majority of the pieces on the Steelers.
I completely agree with that.
I don't care who's starting at quarterback. All 3 of those quarterbacks have proven in camp that they could potentially start in a regular season game. And like
all of them are better than Daniel Jones. There's no doubt
I said at the beginning on our first episode, is my guy is still Mitch Trubisky, but there is a lot of good tape. There's a lot of good preseason action and training camp action that says that Mason Rudolph is, like you said last year, a really, really good option. And then there's even more video, more tape that says that Kenny Pickett is the option. And like I said on the first episode, whichever one you pick, that is going to be your guy. And you have to make this decision really carefully, because you have...
Oh, it's going to be Trubisky. That's already a given.
I guarantee you at Steelers games this year that you will see a high number of George Pickens jerseys.
Oh,
because
yes.
Because he has now been anointed as the receiver of the future.
That's wrong. He has been anointed. He has proven he is. He has earned it.
He had in camp.
Yes.
He hasn't played a regular season game.
This is true.
So why I say he's been anointed is that camp is camp, preseason is preseason. He saw a lot of good looks in preseason, caught his balls, did what he needed to do to be successful. But what you need to But what you need to see out of this guy is you need to see that he can face off against physical cornerbacks. You need to see, because that push in the preseason game, he obliterated that cornerback.
Mhm.
But I will sheed that's going to be called a penalty 7 out of 10 times.
It might be, and that's a factor. So I look at this from, if you were in a dynasty league and you were entering into this offseason, who is the one Steeler you'd want in a dynasty league? And without a doubt, the answer is Najee Harris. Now, where we're at here, if I were in a dynasty league, George Pickens is going to make me second guess that. That is how far Pickens as a second round rookie has come up. He has way outsucceeded Claypool. And even in a redraft league, I would really consider taking Pickens before Claypool in a redraft league.
But I think what's really good for the Steelers in this regard, from when we recorded our first episode to when we're recording this one, is that we are now seeing these guys in action. We're seeing them come up and make decisions. And whatever quarterback they start, George Pickens will be fine.
Yes,
whatever quarterback is started, Najee, it's
Najee and Johnson each will be fine too, because Johnson can get open. Yeah.
Now the question is, consistently for me, is will they put the ball in the end zone? Will the defense? Because there's been some rumblings and stuff in camp about things going on with the defense, Devin Bush and all this other stuff. But the question is, will they break? Or will they bend? And will the offense get into the red zone? Will they be able to make plays with Pat Freiermuth? What is going to happen? And they're, like you said when we first started, they're the ultimate wild card out of any team. They could easily win 10, 11 games, and they could easily lose
10, 11 games. It's also true. So my answer with the defense is this, is that last year, the Steelers were one of the worst teams in third down percentage. We were horrible on first down virtually the entire season, especially in the first halves of the games. So our time of possession for the first time under Tomlin ever was negative season-wide, in terms that the defense was on the field more than the offense. And the number one way you make a defense better is you let them sit on the sideline. Nothing bad happens when they're not on the field. So when you look at all the defensive metrics, just from the simple fact that the offense, even if it goes from bottom third to 23, I mean, this was the 30th offense last year. They were inept, period. And if they just become close-ish to average, you give the guy who just broke the record for sacks, which he did. I know the guy in Baltimore didn't give him that sack that would have given him the official record. TJ broke the record. But if you give them time where they're sitting on the bench and they're coming out with leads, which the Steelers basically never had. Almost all of the Steelers games last year were fourth quarter comeback victories. So if you give them actual leads, the entire team is different, because now you have three less series. That goes
back to game script and what we talked about with a lot of teams.
And the Steelers game script is going to be the opposite. More than any other team, being able to flip the game script from one season to the other. That's what I believe the Steelers are. And that's how the offense for fantasy that comes out of nowhere, that's the fact that borns it. And if I'm looking at the Steelers from a fantasy perspective, my first pick would be Najee, my second would be Johnson, and my third would be Pickens. If we're doing a dynasty league, it goes Pickens, Najee, Johnson. And Claypool is the one who is rapidly losing his target share in this offense, because George Pickens is taking it.
You're not considering Claypool at this point if you're a fantasy guy.
You shouldn't.
You might consider him really, really late after Pickens is taken, maybe a last round, maybe second to last round guy. But he is good enough, and this is something that we can't say about the Giants. The Steelers have 3 viable wide receivers. We can't say this about the Niners, even though they have Deebo Samuel. Kittle is an immensely
Kittle's the number 2 in that team. Ayuk's worse than Claypool.
I'm saying wide receivers have 1. You look at Carolina, they have 1. You look at the Steelers, we have Claypool would be a starter on Giants,
Most
Carolina,
teams, but not
and
ours.
San Francisco.
He also is wrapped with immaturity. So, with that being said, we're kind of running out of time in today's episode, Bob. We talked Steelers barely any. Thank you for watching. You just watched the recap show of the San Francisco 49ers, the Carolina Panthers, the New York Giants, and those Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you've watched all the way through this video, please subscribe. You're definitely the type of person who wants our content and is enjoying it. Please also make sure you click the like banner. That is a big way of being a team player and helping us here at Local Football Flavor. Clicking the like button on every single one of our episodes makes a huge deal. Now, if you want to be a super fan, you can help us by donating to the cause. You can find that link down there in the description below. And if you want to watch this next episode, this is going to be the actual video of the San Francisco 49ers that we discussed in today's episode. So without further ado, click right here. You can see why Doug said that Colin Kaepernick did not get banned because he was doing all that race stuff. He got banned because he wasn't worth getting hired again. He wasn't a good quarterback, as well as all the other information you want to know about the San Francisco 49ers from the direct source material that we got it. Please click to watch that interview.